أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. May peace and blessings of Almighty Allah be upon one and all of you, and blessings of this day of Jummah. This time of the year, and when I say this time of the year, probably everyone's minds go to the new year, the new solar year. But in South Africa, and I think in most of the world, this time of the year represents the matriculation results of the country, and with the matriculation results of the country, flags in our mind education. Because your matric or your schooling career is generally seen as an entry into a career or an opportunity in life, and that's generally linked to progress in society, etc. And today I'd like to focus on this concept of education from a Quranic perspective. I got an interesting survey that was conducted and pronouncing the top 10 schools in the country based on the average A's achieved, and alhamdulillah we can say 3 Muslim schools featured in the top 10 in the country. It does tell us that Muslim society in South Africa at least is setting a good standard when it comes to education. But education in Islam is not one-dimensional. Education in Islam is holistic. And this is what the Quran sets out for us. But coming back home to South Africa, it's actually good to see that schools in the outlying areas are doing well. Schools that were excluded from mainstream education for many, many years under the apartheid regime are now producing excellent results. Unfortunately, those students still endure a lot of hardship. We know there are students who are writing matric exams or writing matric exams, studying under candlelight, without proper infrastructure. I mean, we know at home when our kids are studying, you'll do anything to make their lives easier. So whether it's an air conditioner or a fan or extra lighting, etc., you do that as a parent to make sure that you give your kids the best opportunity in life. The majority of South Africans, forget the world, the majority of South Africans don't have that basic right. I wouldn't say a luxury. For them it's a luxury to have it because it's just virtually impossible. And therefore we compliment those students even more. That they're able to endure that situation and still produce excellent results. And we say Alhamdulillah for that. We must also learn one important lesson when it comes to education, and that Allah will not change the condition of a society unless they change themselves. Now when it comes to the majority Muslim countries, and look at South Africa again, and all the challenges we have, but the South African government in general has taken education quite seriously and is doing its best. The execution may not always be perfect, but the intention, the law is framed in such a way so as to promote education for both boys and girls. But when we look at the world and looking at this from an Islamic context, and we look at the Muslim majority countries, unfortunately, the track record is not great from an educational excellence perspective. Malala Yousaf, for example, is one example. When she stood up for a basic right to education for females, she was shot at by the Taliban. People who are self-styled leaders of the Islamic movement, trying to hijack Islam and take it on a different course. Boko Haram, who says Western education is haram. And then when you ask what's the definition of Western education, they forget that all those subjects they speak about were effectively developed and given to the world by Muslims. So people don't even know the definition of education, but want to speak against and discourage Muslims from pursuing educational excellence. People who don't know the Quranic requirements want to tell women they can't be educated. And they want to give them a sentence to the kitchen. There's no problem if women want to do this of their own volition. But when your daughter or your wife needs to see a gynecologist, then every one of us sitting here would say, I prefer if there were a female gynecologist. Especially when it comes to gynecology. And this is a level of hypocrisy that we've got to deal with. If you want your women to be seen by women gynecologists and women doctors and women physiotherapists, etc., then you need to have them educated. And this is where the Muslim mind needs to start reconciling itself with the Quran. We unfortunately tend to separate between religious knowledge and so-called secular knowledge. Now, as believers, what is our Furqan? Our Furqan is Al-Quran. And in Al-Quran, do we find any separation between these two subjects? For example, in Surah 35, verse 27, Allah talks about ilm. And when He talks about ilm, He refers not to bedroom and bathroom affairs. He refers to geography and geology. There is no الَّذِينَ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Those who reflect upon the خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. In other words, looking at the natural sciences and integrating knowledge and giving us knowledge holistically. It was the church who separated between what is secular and what is religious. And interestingly, if you just read the history of it, I'll quote it to you, during the time of the Crusaders, free thinking of all kinds were put on trial for free thinkers of all kinds were put on trial for various forms of heresy. Numerous men and women were tried and put to death for their crimes. Famous scientists were put to the death penalty. People researching science and technology, it was they who had the separation. Why? Because the scientists found inconsistency between the Bible and science. And because the church were not familiar with these verses of the Bible and how to explain them, they sought the easy way out. It's like in today's day and age, when the traditional scholars can't discuss with you and have an intellectual discourse, what do? They resort to the fatwa of takfir immediately. So everyone is kafir. The moment you challenge convention or you challenge thinking that is not Quranically based, when scholars resort to that takfiri fatwa, they know that scholar is lacking in intellectual depth. There's no reason to take anyone out of the deen. There's reason to engage with the intellect. Of recent, we all know of Qasim Soleimani's killing or murder, assassination in the Middle East. And inshallah, one of the more politically informed speakers will address you on it in the near future. But the response from some of the Muslims calling Soleimani a shaitan, making those judgment calls simply because he was an Iranian and Iranians are known to be Shia. Is it the only difference? And the only thing that's good, so the West can come, can bomb your countries, can kill you, can assassinate you, can violate every form of international law. And simply because we have an ideological difference, we're going to say that that person is a shaitan. The act of aggression is shaitan, is satanic. And we should stop right there. Was Soleimani fighting for the right of his country to be respected for its sovereignty? Yes or no? Yes. Did they invade foreign countries? No. There is a clash in Syria, etc. And those issues must be resolved through the Muslim world, through an independent commission of inquiry between Muslims. But to say and just pass this off as it's a non-event, he's a shaitan, that's childish and immature. It's not a response behooving a Muslim. So the challenge that Muslims have is that we're falling into the trap that the West set for us. In other words, not the West in particular, but the church. They are not our leaders in deen. If they say there's secular and there's religious, we don't aim that. What we say is, please show us that distinction in the Quran. It's not there. Now, whilst the church were prosecuting and persecuting these thinkers, on the other hand, Muslims did the following. Muslim astronomers were the first to establish observatories. They invented instruments such as the quadrant, which led to advances not only in astronomy but in oceanic navigation, contributing to the European age of exploration. The Muslims invented the symbol of zero, and they organized the numbers into the decimal system. Additionally, it is Muslims who invented the symbol to express an unknown quantity, and that is the variable x, which is studied in mathematics. You can't finish school without understanding x. The great Muslim mathematician Al-Khwarizmi invented the subject algebra. What about Muslim contribution to medical science? Al-Razi, the famous physician and scientist, was one of the greatest physicians in the world in the Middle Ages. He also wrote a treatise on hygiene in hospitals. This is hundreds of years ago. Why? Because we never had this thing about DNA knowledge and about secular knowledge. So if you become a doctor or a physiotherapist or a scientist, we should congratulate you and say, Alhamdulillah, you became an alim. You are an alim in your field. And the Quran that you learn must be integrated into your field. So when you take the oath of Hippocrates, you don't become a hypocrite. You remain loyal to the saving of human life. All of these great physicians and mathematicians of times gone by, Muslims in particular, were any one of them known for their wealth, for their lofty mansions? No, because that wasn't the interest. The interest was in furthering society, in making society, making the world a better place. Until today, for example, it was Ibn Sina, perhaps the greatest physician until the modern era. His famous book Al-Qanun remained a standard textbook even in Europe for over 700 years. Ibn Sina's work is still studied and built upon in certain areas of the world. So how many of our doctors participate in Doctors Without Borders? When I meet Doctors Without Borders and you go to certain shopping areas and you admire the work they do, they leave their families and they travel across the most dangerous parts of this world in service to humanity. I want to know how many Muslim doctors participate in Doctors Without Borders. Those doctors, we can criticize them for all we want, but they're not doing it. They have no lofty mentions. They were like Ibn Sina, etc. And this is where the Muslim mind should be. The careers that we're pursuing now, we've completed our matric, can not only be about money. It needs to be about furthering, making this world a better place. That's the priority we should have. Education should be seen in Islam as an ibadah. As much as you want to pray and fast, alhamdulillah, education should have an equal priority. How do we think Dawood alayhi salam dealt with Jalut? وَقَتَلَ دَاوُودُ جَالُوتَ. Dawood was known to be a small force, but an intelligent force. And Jalut was this brute force. And one of the problems of the world with the Iranian regime is that, and I don't agree with everything in Iran, but the high regard for education. There are thousands and thousands of foreign students studying in Iran. They say the average degree is highest ranking in Iran than in the whole world. In other words, if you want a job in areas like Iran, you have to be pursuing a PhD. And we admire them for it. The rest of the Muslim world needs to emulate that and not separate our deen to say Islamic and secular. And this is why I believe the first set of verses revealed to the Prophet ﷺ was Iqra. And then becomes the second set, and he talks about Qalam. When you put these two together, you can't escape the fact that he's talking about literacy. Because literacy is linked to the success of a society. And the same literacy can be a danger as well if it's left uncontrolled. For example, when we develop the stealth bombers, etc., and we use them for wrong reason, we have the right mind, and Albert Einstein and Isaac Newton will all tell you the same thing. If you use the technology for a wrong reason, it could destroy the world. And therefore the Quran governs education holistically with taqwa and iman. Why? What does it do? It balances education. It creates that balance. It makes it holistic. So when you become educated with the greatest of weapons and technology, your iman and your taqwa, your consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will prevent you from abusing that knowledge. And this is the beauty we have in Islam. Now when people, the enemies of Islam, see this beauty, they bring us information that diverts our mind and keeps us away from pursuing these goals. So what do we become? We become blind sectarians. And we focus on issues that don't affect human rights or the preservation of human dignity. So we'll talk about irrelevant issues. And we'll write books and books upon bedroom and bathroom affairs and keep the Muslim mind just here. Don't take him out of that to expose him to the world, because you have a desire to make the world a better place. And when we have a desire to make the world a better place and restore social justice, who does it affect? It affects the manipulators and the corruptors. But the Quran is on every page and every surah reminds us of this importance of social justice, of the importance of human progress. Just two quick verses before I conclude. The one is, if you take all the superpowers in times gone by, the Ad, the Thamud, etc., and the Quran describes the power they had. It says, you have no power. Go to the previous generations and you'll see the power that they had. And if you travel to Syria, etc., till today, with all of the ravaging, some of those sites, many of those sites are still preserved. Why? Because they were so powerfully constructed that it's virtually indestructible. They built palaces out of mountains. It's impossible for the human hand even today to do. But Allah says they had the power to do so. And they were destroyed. Why were they destroyed? Because they didn't take the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala seriously. Now, if you take all those verses, all that was mentioned to them was observe the messenger. It wasn't said to them, go and destroy these homes. You can't. Allah says, I'll give you more. I'll give you rain. Just don't abuse human beings. Don't commit aggression. Don't be jabbar. Don't go and abuse people's rights, etc. That's all they had to do. So in other words, the material progress was not condemned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It was the violation of human rights that was condemned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then if you look at Surah Hadid, Allah says, we sent the Rasuls, or we sent Rasuls aforetime, for what? يَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ, in order to establish justice. Why isn't all of our khutbah and our members focusing on this aspect of social justice? We cannot stand there with a clean conscience and be blinded to what's happening in Yemen and what's happening in Syria. We need to be speaking and actively involved in these matters from a deen perspective. يَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ. And then Allah says, وَأَنزَلْنَا الْحَدِيدِ. We have given you iron. Now what's iron? Iron, Allah says, it is material for mighty warfare and other benefits from you. You're not going to drive home without the benefits of iron. You're not going to come to the mosque without iron. You're not going to build a mosque without iron. You're going to do nothing without iron. So Allah says, in it is multiple benefits for mankind. Already giving us a hint that you Muslims, you need to be masters of iron and technology. Why? يَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ, in order to pursue the ends of social justice. That human beings can live, wake up in the morning and have a breakfast without thinking, where am I going to find either my next meal or when is the next bomb coming to rain down on me? It's when Muslim society abdicated its responsibility. And I believe the sole reason for that is Quranic illiteracy. We have read the Quran in a language we don't understand. When we as an ummah start familiarizing ourselves with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I think these things will start falling into place because we'll make the demands and we'll see change, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the hikmah and the hidayah to see that. It's the 2020 solar year. Let's make a good start to it with the right information before us and take the Quran as our guide, read and understand it every single day, a little bit of it. As the Quran says in Surah Muzammil, read of it as much as you can, as much as is easy for you. Allah doesn't make things difficult for us. Let us make this a year to come, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.